First, thank you all for coming, taking time out of your day to join us. This is obviously the first of my crime and safety meetings here as the commanding officer of District 5. I want to thank our partners here, Community Warehouse, for allowing us to use this facility. We tried to have it outside so we could responsibly socially distance and not be kind of in an enclosed area. The weather didn't work out, so this worked out perfectly for us. So, we've had a crazy few months. I am David Feldmeyer. I am the new captain at District 5. I have been here since April, the end of April. So I was the acting captain. I was in that capacity as the acting captain. I was a lieutenant. I was also assigned to internal affairs. So I was doing two jobs for a little while. It was kind of a headache. I took over just in time to deal with COVID pandemic and some civil unrest that we had in our city. I've been tested quite a bit, to say the least. But I'm still here, I'm still standing. So a little bit about me. I'm completing my 25th year with the Milwaukee Police Department as an officer, as a sworn officer. I'll have 25 complete in December. I've had a chance to work a whole lot of different assignments. I started out at District 7. I worked there for about 6.5 years. I got transferred in a large 300-person transfer under Chief Jones, and I got sent to District 5. And I spent 6.5 years here at District 5, and it was wonderful. It was very challenging, but it was wonderful. During that time, I had a seasonal job as a harbor patrol officer, which, if you can ask any of the guys or gals on this job that have ever done that, that is the coolest job that we have, hands down. Largest square mileage patrol area in the entire country, and you get to work on some of the coolest equipment that any officer ever gets to work on. So I'm blessed in that regard. I'm an instructor. I've taught at the academy, defensive and arrest tactics, firearms, simunitions. I teach fair and impartial policing. I'm an adjunct instructor with the University, Northwestern University Center for Public Safety. I've got a degree in psychology. I was promoted off of the boats and out of District 5, went to internal affairs as an investigator. I spent 3 years there. I got to see all kinds of things. One, opened my eyes to maybe some of the things that we were hearing from the community. It also gave me an understanding of how our department works from the inside, and gave me some insight into that. From there, I went and worked on the Tactical Enforcement Unit as an operator and as a team leader. Again, some pretty interesting stuff. You get tested there. On that unit, that is when someone is having a really, really bad day. And it's not just that someone, it's also the officers who are sent to respond to that someone who's having a really bad day. And those officers can't resolve that situation. So they send in specially trained individuals. I was part of that unit. Some of the most satisfying work I've ever done, some of the scariest work I've ever done. I got promoted off that unit, became a lieutenant. I was a shift commander at District 4, up on the far north side. I was the early shift commander. Again, got a chance to work with the community. I had great employees that I worked with. I think we did well there, dealing with crime issues, other social issues, and really bringing that district forward from where it had been. I was then selected to go back to internal affairs. Then I was the lieutenant. Now I'm, a decision maker up there. That's tough. It's tough. Not a lot of people get the chance to be in that position. I worked with the chief a lot. I, at that point, was dealing with discipline of officers. We deal with misconduct and other things. So it gave me some insight into how and why we discipline our officers, what types of things we discipline them for, and what kind of impact that has on all of us. I had gone through the captain's process a few times, didn't get it, and then finally was told, you're going to get it. And then was promptly transferred to District 5 to take over as the old captain, Captain Tursinovich, was retiring. I was put into the new spot, and it was mine as the acting captain. And then all of that I just explained, COVID, civil unrest, crime rates, skyrocketing violent crime rates, all of that I kind of stepped into. So that's a little bit about me. Some have asked, what are my goals for this department? What are my goals for this district, for this department, for my people? Okay. The giant elephant in the room has been police community relations. It has been for a while. And I'm trying to get people to understand that. I'm trying to learn about it myself, where it comes from, why maybe we have some of the difficulties we have. So my goal is to bridge that gap, to get us more involved in the community. As we see crime rates starting to rise and violent crime rates starting to rise, and let's be honest, they're out of control. We need help. We need help. We need help from the community. We need help from you. We also need help to understand what it is that our community needs and wants from us. We're not clairvoyant. I wish I could read minds. I can't. We need help. So we need to bring everybody to the table. And when I say everybody, that means everybody. Those of you who come to these crime and safety meetings all the time, we know you're going to be there, and we thank you for that. We also need those individuals who are sitting there going, I wonder what that's like. If you know people who sit on the outside and say, I'd like to get involved, but I'm not sure what I can do, bring them along. If you know people who say, nobody's going to listen to me, I've been to jail. Nobody's going to listen to me, I've been arrested. No one's going to listen to me, I've been talked to by the police 100 times, last month, this month, in my lifetime, whatever it is. No one's going to talk to me, I issued a complaint against an officer because I didn't like the service that I got. If you know people who are in that boat, you need to bring them to the table as well. They have a voice in this. They have a responsibility in this. So our officers go out, and you hear it all the time, and sometimes it starts to become cliche, and I get it. I get it. But they do truly put their lives on the line for this community. They really do. But they can't do it alone. They absolutely can't do it alone. So we ask for your help. Right? So that's one of my goals. The other goal, right? Let's bring the crime rate down, right? How do we stop it? How do we stop all of it? That would be great. I would love to be able to put together a formula that says, if we do this and we do this and we do this, it's all going to disappear. It's not that simple. We are human beings making choices. I'm not there when you make that choice. Sometimes that choice gets made inside a home in circumstances that might not allow that individual to probably make the choice that we would make. So again, we need your help. We need the community partners. We need individual organizations that have that reach into that home. And we will do our part. If you invite us into your home, absolutely we'll be there. That's not always an option for a lot of people. Not yet, anyway. Hopefully we get to that point where absolutely mom, dad, guardian, brother, sister, whatever, can pick up that phone. Call up officer so-and-so, who they have a relationship with, who knows that circumstance, who knows that family, who can say, I know exactly what I need to say to John, Julie, mom, dad, whoever, to try and resolve whatever issue that they're working with. Be able to give them resources to be able to resolve whatever issue they're dealing with that we can't. There are many things that we get called to, that we respond to, and we do it happily because that's our job. We swore an oath to do so. But we are ill-equipped to be able to help you in many of those regards. We try, and they try and train us. CIT, that's a big one. Mental health. It's a large issue that we see throughout many of the communities within this city. We're trained as best we can to stabilize a situation, but many times it's ongoing. We don't know how to deal with the source because we weren't there when it began. And we're not trained, we're not psychologists, unless somebody happens to be a psychologist. We're not therapists, unless somebody just happens to be a therapist. But many times, that's what we're asked to do. And we do it gladly, and we do it to the best of our ability. But we can't always do it. Crime rate, right? The other part of trying to get, or a goal that I have for our district, is just for us internally, as police members, to be more professional. More professional, more human, to understand that the individuals that they're interacting with on a daily basis, the people that call for them, the people who are saying, I'm in crisis, I need your help, to be able to have them look at those individuals and say, you're a human being and I'm going to help you. But more than that, it's getting them to show all of you that behind this badge, under this vest, is also a human being. If I cut my arm, and I cut your arm, and I cut your arm, and I cut your arm, we're probably going to bleed. And what color is that blood going to be? It's going to be red. And it's going to be pumping from the same biological mechanism if we strip it all away. When we get to know each other, we treat each other like human beings, and we start to truly understand that, we start to realize how much more alike we are than we are different. I had an opportunity during a lot of the civil unrest to take walks, and I know that made some of my subordinates a little nervous. What's the captain doing? Why is he walking out there? He doesn't have a vest on. He doesn't have a gun on. We can't be afraid to provide service in our community. I say this over and over and over again. I teach code of conduct to our new police recruits, and that's usually on day 1 or 2, right? So they're brand spanking new. And I tell them this over and over again. You cannot be afraid to police this community. You can't be. Because the citizens live here, they depend on you. They're not afraid to live here because they're living here. We can't be afraid to provide service to people who live here. Professionalism, that's a big deal for me. Customer service, that's a big deal for me. I tell that to the people I work with. We are in the customer service business. In fact, arguably, the best customer service business that you are going to find. Sometimes it's not to the liking of the individual who calls, but think about it. When you pick up the phone for almost anything, and when I say almost anything, in my 25 years, I've gone to just about everything. From squirrels in the attic, to my plumbing doesn't work, to I don't know how to fix my lock, all the way up to the big ones that we all know of, homicides and things of that nature, violent crime, and everything else in between. My kid won't go to bed. Right? What would you like me to do about it? But guess what? I'm standing in your living room listening to how your kid can't go to bed. Think about that. Those are the types of things that we get sent to. And we do it happily because we swore that oath. That's our job. I will tell you this, and I'm not trying to politicize this in any manner, way, shape, or form. There's a narrative that's out there. People are entitled to their opinion. Absolutely. You've heard the phrase, defund the police. You've heard it. Absolutely. I've heard it as well. There are some who would like to see whole police departments disbanded. I don't know if that's practical. I don't think it is. I don't know of any community that's going to say, oh, that's a great idea, right? Reallocating funds from the police department. Okay, that's a conversation we can have. Reallocating funds from the police department to take that money and put it toward social services, put it toward mental health, put it toward education. Absolutely, we can have that discussion. Understand, however, when money is removed from one entity, that means the capability of that entity to do and provide some of the services that they provide starts to go down. And that's part of what we need to deal with internally as a department. How do we become more efficient with less? And we've been doing that in the 25 years I've been on. Every year it's less, 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 less. And I get it. The dollar can only go so far. There's only so many pieces of the pie. I understand that. My colleagues on the 7th floor, and when I say 7th floor, that's our executive command. Those are chiefs, assistant chiefs, inspectors. Those are the policy makers, the decision makers. And they understand that as well. And this is not to shock or scare anybody, but as we're on the subject of diminishing resources, that also means that we will probably have to retool some of our call priority list. So, some of those services, some of those calls that community members are accustomed to us responding to, we probably won't be responding to. And I can tell you with certainty that the 7th floor is looking at that call priority and trying to figure out, how do we slash? Because it's a very real thing. And again, I'm not trying to scare anybody. That's not it. That's not it at all. We will still provide services. Absolutely. We will still continue to come. It's just, what are we going to be responding to? And right now, I don't know. What does that mean right now in the immediate future or in the present? Nothing. Right now, it's still the same. We still respond to what we respond to. That hasn't changed. But understand that that's looming. Those are going to be discussions that our elected officials are going to have. Those are going to be discussions that us internally we're going to have. Community is going to absolutely have to have a say in that. So if you have an opinion about any of it, get involved. Get involved. Part of getting involved, too, is getting yourself registered to vote, getting yourself to the poll, making yourself heard. Now, there were some during our civil unrest who were not happy with the way that we handled many of the interactions that we had with some of the crowds. Right? I can tell you that some of us in the department weren't crazy about how we had to interact with some of the individuals in the crowds. Right? It's a complicated subject. I'm not going to make excuses for anyone. Right? Some of it is policy that I just can't share because I don't have the authority to share with. But the department, especially in the environment and the climate, and with the narrative and rhetoric that we heard, and some of it, absolutely, say it, you need to, because there needed to be change, and we 100% support people's right to voice their opinion. But we got put in a really precarious position. It was difficult for us because we're protecting individuals' right to demonstrate, voice their opinion, show their frustration. Absolutely, we're protecting that. We swore an oath to protect the Constitution and say you have the right to do that in this country without any kind of repercussions. The catch-22 for us is that we have just as many individuals who are calling us and saying, they're tearing up my street, they're blocking my street, they're causing vandalism, they're doing X, Y, and Z. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Difficult decisions. Some of those decisions were made at levels much higher than mine. Some of the decisions I was able to take care of in the district by us. I would get a report, hey, we got 150 marchers that are coming down the street, they didn't pull a permit, what do you want us to do? Well, let's be honest, you didn't pull a permit. So you really don't have the permission to take up that street. Block traffic. Stop members from getting to and from work. Shutting off access to businesses that are just trying to make a living. But I had to balance some of that with, all right, people's right to peacefully assemble. And we did that to the best of our ability. Now, there were some nights in front of our district that, let's face it, just got out of control. Completely got out of control. My objective on those nights was to preserve District 5. And I even talked with individuals in the crowd and told them, these officers are standing on the line for a reason. If this building burns and falls and everybody in it is not here anymore, what does the neighborhood do? The neighborhood and the community are the only reason that building is there. It's to provide service for that neighborhood. If it's not there, what do we do? I didn't want to find out. The National Guard, that's somebody else's decision. That was not my decision. I'm thankful that someone was willing to come and help us. Do I think we needed them? I think on most nights, probably not. Some of the things that I learned while walking through the crowds and speaking with individuals on my walks, unprotected, much to the dismay of many of my subordinates, was some of the anger and frustration that was coming out of the demonstrations and why it was coming out of the demonstrations. It's very real. Some of the reasons why District 5, and a lot of people keep asking why District 5, was the epicenter of a lot of that. And I apologize, I'm 197 tonight, so what that means is I am the acting night inspector, so that executive level people that I talked about, I'm one of them tonight for the entire city, so I act on behalf of the chief. So I might be a little distracted if somebody calls me and tells me there's something important going on somewhere else. But I'm here because this is much more important to me. But the frustration, the anger that was coming out of that crowd, I understand it. And I got to hear some of the stories, some of the experiences that people shared with me. What I brought back from that and what I tried to share with my officers and tried to get my officers to see and maybe understand and maybe think a little differently about what they were seeing was that everybody's experience is valid. Maybe because I didn't go through something doesn't mean that you didn't and that it didn't impact you. And maybe it impacted you negatively. And maybe you didn't have any context for it. Maybe you don't know why. That's where we sit down and we have those conversations. But to get my officers to understand that the things that you hear, and believe me, we heard some incredible stuff. I was interviewed by the Journal-Sentinel, and one of the questions that the reporter asked was, what is one of the worst things that you heard coming out of the crowd? I told him I can't say most of what I heard. It was unbelievable to me to hear some of the things that were being said. How you could say that to another human being who you don't know. How you could say that to another human being who was just doing their job. Some of these officers are brand new out of the academy. They've worked in the neighborhoods for a few weeks, a few months, some of them less than a year. They haven't done anything bad to anybody. Some of them haven't done anything bad to anybody their entire lives. And here they are standing on the line being told, you should die, your family should die. And it got much worse than that. But getting officers to understand that that anger, some of those things that you're hearing, it's not to you. It's to a much larger, sometimes perceived and sometimes real, broken system that we are all a part of. We as law enforcement, unfortunately, are the most visible, most accessible part of that system. Like I told you before, calls because someone's kid won't go to bed. Try getting, and no offense to our elected officials, but try getting an alderman to come to your house because your kid won't go to bed. Try calling up a judge to come and take a report about your car. Try getting the DA to come out. They're not even at work right now. They're all working from home. Guess who's not working from home? Guess who's working every day from their work locations? People wearing the uniforms that I'm wearing. And I'm trying not to get preachy. And I know sometimes I can get I can drone on a little bit. And I apologize for that. But I need people to understand that these are conversations we have. I think the narrative out there makes it seem as if we all believe this one thing as law enforcement, and we watch something happen across the country, and we all sit back and go, well, yeah, that was justified. No, that's not the way it works. George Floyd. It's what brought us to this head, right? This is something that's been building and building and building and building and building. But let's face it, that image, that video, us watching someone kill somebody else live, and I'm going to tell you, to a man and a woman, the minute that came out, I told every one of my supervisors on all 5 shifts to play that video. Watch it. Understand how wrong that is. Understand that is not us. That officer did not work for the Milwaukee Police Department. No one in our police department is trained in that manner. That is not how you treat a human being. Period. We got on the same page. And every one of us can look at that and say, that was murder. I think sometimes those types of conversations, because communities can't be in that room when we have them, it's believed those conversations don't happen. That couldn't be further from the truth. I didn't mean to bring the whole room down a little bit. But this is serious, and I tell my officers, this is serious. What we do is serious. We are human beings dealing with human beings. Many times we work in, and we hear it all the time, right? There's black and white, and then there's gray. We work in a lot of gray. We get asked to do a lot of things with very little information. It's difficult sometimes when we show up on a scene and everybody is emotional and the scene is chaotic and you don't understand what's happening. All you know is people are pointing in a direction and saying, there's the person in the middle of that giant fight. So the two of you, you and your partner, you go bring a resolution to that. Oh, and by the way, there may be a few guns in the crowd. It's what our officers deal with. And I don't excuse anybody's behavior when they can't be professional, when they can't treat somebody with dignity, when they can't treat somebody with like a human being. We all know what that looks like. So, that was a very long, roundabout way for me to say, those are my goals for District 5. And I encourage each and every one of you to be a part of those goals because I need you. I need your help. We need your help. We can't get this done alone. We absolutely cannot. We've done a really good job in the history of our police department of figuring out how to police, right? The police part of it. We've got 100 different techniques, 1 million different strategies, all kinds of cool equipment in certain work locations. I think we need a lot of work on the community part of our community policing strategy. And that's where you come in. And I'm willing to sit down and listen to anybody who is willing to sit and talk with me. And when I say listen, not just to say, yeah, I sat down with that person and that was great, and then I get up and that's it. Ask anybody who's worked with me, anyone who's worked for me, or anyone I've worked for. I take everything that comes my way, I think about it, and I try and figure out a way, how do we employ this? How can I take your idea and have it work for both of us? I may not be able to take all of it. There may be some things statutorily, or even training-wise, or from a strategic standpoint, that we just can't do. We're not built to do. But there may be part of your idea that absolutely will work. So again, thank you for coming. Thank you for the welcome. And we'll get on with the rest of our meeting here. So they gave me these stats. You can take a look at. Or, you know what? You guys can read, right? You see the number on the bottom, aggravated assaults 123, burglaries 38, all of that.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Absolutely. So here's just one thing. So you can look at those things, you can see where they're happening. If you have questions, obviously we can answer them afterward. But I'm going to open it up for a question and answer for me, because I'm sure a lot of people are curious.
Okay, as it relates to your goals, what departments or divisions or agencies or committees within our government do you think that can help you support your goals the most?
Oh.
I mean, you make reference to our aldermen, common council are debating on how to reform the police department. Many of those aldermen and women chair committees, are on certain boards that I believe could dramatically assist you in your goals. And one that comes to mind for me is the licensing committee. You know, and their ability to give out or take away licenses for businesses that could potentially be chronic problems in neighborhoods and chronic problems for the police department. So, just also so that I know, so I can talk to my alderman or woman, you know, what other agencies within our government can help you with your goals?
It sounds like you answered your own question, right? Our elected officials. So those individuals that hold those offices, they're also the ones that hold our purse strings. They're the ones that either approve or deny funding and resources and where it goes. They chair those committees that make the decision as to how licensing will be handled, what type of laws we're going to have on the books to enforce, even to what extent we're going to enforce those laws. So if you're looking for an avenue to find an ally for the police department or an entity within the city to try and help, that's a good place to start. Elected officials. We have a fire and police commission, which right now is under some transition, to put it politely. But they're the governing body for the police department. Our boss is the chief. The chief has a boss as well. It's another place to start. And then community organizations. Community Warehouse, Hunger Task Force, places like that have influence with our elected officials. Again, you see a theme? It's kind of coming back, all back around. And how do we influence our elected officials? We get ourselves registered and we go and vote. That's how we do it. And when they have town hall meetings, we show up en masse. We voice our opinion. And when we want to seek an audience with them, right, we persist. That's how we make that change. Other questions?
Really easy one. Just the dates for these stats.
What is the date for our stats? So, go ahead.
Usually it's around 30 days. 30 days.
So, and I apologize, there's another group of stats that I get from our really smart people up in the Office of Management and Planning. But over the last several weeks, for whatever reason, I get the email, but there's no stats. And I get a little line. Unfortunately, we're not able to give you whatever. So that particular work location within our department might be under some transition as well. I think we all are. I'm going to share this as well. We've got a lot of people who are leaving. A lot of people who are leaving. There's a lot of experience that's leaving. And I am thankful and I'm amazed that we have as many people who volunteer or sign up or seek a position in the police department to take those places, but it's going to take a while to replace that experience. So the reason why we're having so many people leave is in the 90s, we had COPS grants that allowed us to hire a lot of police officers, not just in our city, all across the country. Many big cities like ours have a 25-year and out eligibility for retirement. And just like I'm reaching that retirement age, many other people are as well. We're talking about a 40+% turnover over the last 5 years. It's a lot. And some of the individuals who said, no problem, I will stay on, I'll be that voice of reason, I will be that guiding source, I will be that experience. The last month and a half, you can imagine what some of those decisions are like. Why am I staying? Why would I stay to do this? My family endured me leaving the home every day and hoping that I came back in one piece, physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, which is difficult to do. They endured all of that. I got to the finish line. They would like me to now be theirs. And I think at one point they were willing to say, you know what, I'll share my loved one for a little bit longer. No problem. Now, not so much.
Captain, Thank you so much for just giving us a little bit of background about, your time working with the Milwaukee Police Department. Would you be supportive of the city reinforcing residency requirements? Because that would possibly help with community policing, where more of the officers actually live in the city of Milwaukee, and they don't see us just as citizens that they serve, but they see us as neighbors, as more of them would actually live in the city.
So I've got mixed feelings on that. I live in the city. Obviously, the majority of my career I had the residency, so I had to live here. I raised my kids here. You can never go wrong with living where you work. You just can't. I think it says a lot. One, if you have, just from an economic standpoint, right, individuals who have gainful employment, who own their houses, who recreate, who spend money here, that can only be good. And then from a social standpoint, individuals who we hope that the individuals that we're hiring are the type of people that we want to be your neighbor. And if we have them here, absolutely. Now, I'm also a big choice person, right? So we talk about diversity, and we talk about the lack of diversity in some of our surrounding suburbs. Some of our city employees belong to a certain demographic, right? Without trying to racialize things. If we want to grow the diversity throughout southeastern Wisconsin, why would we make people only live in one particular area? And that's the mixed feelings that I have. If the department said, or if the city said, hey, there's a residency, well, then that's what it is, right?
But the flip side of it would be when you have people who lived in the suburbs as long as they have, and they've had very to almost no interaction with people of color who live on the inside of the city. Many of them come with their own prejudices that are stereotypes because they have not interacted with people of color. So that's what would lead to not only just people of color, but just people who live in the city, period. That would lead to some of the things that people have been feeling because of the civil unrest, things that have happened in the city that haven't been captured by video.
Absolutely. And that absolutely can happen. It can. You can also build resentment, right? When you can't have your children go to the school that you want them to go to. If you can't buy the house with the property that you want to, right? So, like I said, I have mixed feelings on it. If the city decided, hey, we're going back to that, I don't think there's anything bad that can happen. I think it can only be good. But again, I think it's got to be a mindset change, and I think we really need to think regionally about where we're at. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Go ahead.
I just want to follow up, and I had a similar question. I hope you can hear me okay with this marathon. I also thank you, Captain, for coming out and having a community meeting in this format where we can be as personal as we can in the time of COVID. I guess the question I have is, I live here in Harambe, and my perception, having been a longtime resident, is that the community members have lost their trust in the police in general, and the 5th District specifically, because the best way I can put it is that the police never seem to be there when the crime is occurring. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't have, you have that thought as a resident. If the cops aren't here when the crime is occurring, how are the cops going to not only stop this crime, but protect me, because I just called you guys and you're not here?
So we have captains meetings every Wednesday, so all the captains have to go and talk. After that, we have shoot review, and we talk about some of the non-fatal shootings and homicides that we have. And the chief sits in on that. And the captains get taken to task as to why we couldn't have prevented X, Y, and Z. We get back to that resource allocation. And the fact that we respond to everything. Sometimes we just don't have an officer there. Sometimes I think we don't realize how many bad things are happening in our city. And I would love to have people there all the time. So under our last chief, we had a strategy to try and put officers in public spaces as much as they can. And it's that catch-22 again for law enforcement, for us specifically, the police department, and even maybe District 5. Many individuals see us as an occupying force. I'm going to tell you right now, in this environment, although yes, we are sworn to protect and serve, and yes, we do our job as best we can, nobody wants to push that.
It seems to me that the most effective ways that have been used to address crime is to create a saturation of officers in higher crime districts. I mean, I lived in the District of Columbia. They addressed the drug trade. Every time you turned around, there was a squad, an officer. I ran a business in the 3rd Ward. There were police officers. Before it became cool.
Yeah.
Okay, before it became a chic place to be, there were officers on horseback, they were walking, they were biking. Sometimes you would see somebody overhead, they were in the squads every day, all day.
Yeah.
So,
and that's
to move officers.
absolutely, and we do that. We do that often.
Where?
We've just got a lot of areas to move people.
Where do you do that, for real?
So-
I have a business in this district, and I rarely see police officers right on MLK Road. I see all kinds of traffic drama. There are drug routes happening in my parking lot as well as prostitution right in the middle of the day, and I don't see anyone. So where are you?
Okay, that's unfortunately not my district, but I know that the District 3 commander does the exact same thing. So when we have hot spots, when we've got non-fatal shootings, and we've got lots of things that are happening in a particular area, especially violent crime, that's where we end up moving a lot of our beat officers. We don't have many. I would love to say that I've got 500 officers to be able to deploy everywhere all the time. I just don't. And especially during a lot of what we had over the last month and a half. A lot of those officers were assigned to our MERT team. So then they get pulled out of the districts to try and guard businesses, to try and guard districts, those types of things. But we do, and we'll do more. I'll take a look at my resources and find out, all right, do I need to have this particular squad here? Do they need to be in a car? Can I put them walking? I've got bicycle officers that I try and deploy as much as I can. A lot of times we put a lot of resources at night. So you might not always see them, but they're there. Sometimes they're stuck on a shooting scene. I don't know if you know, over the weekend, 4th of July, we had 7 shootings, 13 people. There are officers that have to investigate those, on top of everything else that we respond to, that we're getting called to. And that's not an excuse. That's not saying we can't be more efficient and that we can't be better at it. And absolutely, I appreciate people bringing that to our attention. But it's not something that we don't already know and that we're not trying to address. We just can't always address it as quickly as we would like. But it doesn't mean we stop trying. I know that probably didn't help much. We're trying. We are trying. I'm telling you, we are trying.
I would be happy to ride with you one night and show you where the crime is.
Absolutely. Oh, hey, I already know where the crime is. I know where the crime is. I just can't always get somebody there.
Have there, I know you mentioned grants in the past that hired more police. Are there any like incentives now or grants that have been in discussion to hire more minorities, as he said, like within or from the community?
Not
Sign-on
that,
bonuses? Like
yeah,
that?
not that I know of. I know there are, believe it or not, there are major metropolitan police departments that come and recruit out of the city of Milwaukee. Dallas, Atlanta, Phoenix, places like that will send their recruiting teams to Milwaukee and try and get individuals who have grown up here, or even officers who already work here, who are already certified and who have some experience, to come and work for them.
So it's an incentive package for them.
Sometimes there is. There's, you know, they'll move you, they'll give you some kind of signing bonus, for lack of a better. I don't know if we're there. Is that something we should be looking at? Absolutely.
If you're saying you're short based on the saturation of
Yeah.
officers in the community, yeah.
We-
And then people in the community being hired as officers, it's something, because it is a disconnect where a lot of people within this community are afraid of police, are afraid to be, at your point, a minority at a higher level in the district, but that's part of the problem. So something to get people more comfortable upon successful completion of the academy, maybe some type of sign-on bonus or something will help.
Absolutely. And I think more important than that is to find out why. Why are people who are in our department, who might happen to look like me, why would they be afraid to be in my position?
Oh, no.
Right?
People that's not police officers are afraid to go to the academy. It's like they don't have any incentive.
And that's, there comes the, you know, there lies the question, right? Is it just the money?
I don't believe.
Right? Is it just the money? Is it just this? Is it that? Is it the social climate? Is it the stigma that's attached to it, right? All those things. And that's part of that conversation we have to have. That incredibly difficult conversation, right? Where we all sit down and we're all going to have to hear some things that we don't want to hear, but we're going to have to hear it. And when I say we all are going to have to hear some things that we don't want to hear, everybody's going to have to hear those things from everyone, right? And you can't hold it personally. I can't hold it against you, right? I just need to hear it so I know. I can't fix something I don't know what's broken, right? And that's what this part of this is. All of you being here, letting me know, hey, this is broken. How do we fix it?
I can recall when I was younger about their age, where the police used to give out baseball cards in the community, more community events for kids and adults.
Absolutely.
We don't have that anymore in my.
Absolutely. And I don't know why that stopped. We hear coppers all the time. Like I used to, I'd have a pack of baseball cards, and anytime I'd come down a street, it didn't matter where I was. If I pulled over, and I could be on the absolute most serious call there is to go on, and I would have a group of kids running up and asking if I had baseball cards. And that still happened, even after we stopped. Now, I don't know if that was a partnership with the Brewers that needs to be rekindled. I don't know. I don't know what that is. But obviously, you're sharing it with me. You're not the only one thinking about it. And we'll keep moving that on up. The other thing that you had, hiring more officers and having incentives, pay incentives. Obviously, in the current climate, where we have defund the police in front of City Hall, right? Again, that's where we need help from the elected officials. How do we come to a balance? How do we figure out what's going to work? How do we figure out, all right, we need to become more efficient, so we got to chop off some of the calls that we go to, right? And we're going to reprioritize that, but we also want to keep officers out and engaged in the numbers that we need them to, so that they can be in the places that we want them to be, because we don't see them. That's...
Next time, I believe the police officers, because defunding the police, the easiest and best way to defund the police is to stop crime. That could be the police platform.
Absolutely.
In response to anyone saying, let's defund the police.
I would agree with you.
Okay, I would love that. Let's stop committing as much crime. We won't need as much resources to pull these officers to the community. The more crime, the more officers, the more funding and resources we'll need to fund the police.
Yeah, but and it becomes that vicious cycle, though, right? Because some of the funding that people want to use from the police department, and we're not the only ones that are funded, maybe, and we're not the only ones that are overfunded. Some of that money would go to some of these other resources so that we could address some of the issues, some of the problems, some of the circumstances, some of the challenges that are influencing individuals to commit crime.
I just have a comment. I find it interesting that whenever police officers are faced with a cut, that the first thing they want to do is cut service, when there are other ways that money can be cut, can be saved, which is reducing the amount that goes into pension, also reducing retirement packages. This happens at corporations all across the United States, including ones I've worked for. But for some reason, everyone else is expected to keep on the same level of service and quality of product, but you all want to cut your service. That's the first thing we talk about.
I hear you. I hear you. And we're already starting, we've now started contributing into our pension. We never did that before. We do it now. And there's going to be more. There's going to be more. We already know there's going to be more. So you're right. You're on that track. The city sees it. Comptroller sees it. Elected officials see it. Our unions see it. They know it. They tell us, here's what it's going to be. So those things are happening. And when, yeah.
So, in my experience for the last 15 or so years, I feel like beats are effective. I don't know if they are, but anecdotally, I feel. So, over the years, I've seen some pretty successful beats in like River West. We were really building on East Capitol Drive, although we changed officers a few times. Is there, I mean, I know listening to your goals, I feel like having beat officers that are getting to know a very specific area is very effective, especially if they're not, if the officers aren't changing every 2 months, which kind of happened with East Capitol Drive before. And we all know East Capitol Drive is kind of a hot mess. But is there a plan to incorporate more beats, which gets to that community policing and?
So, the reason I knew this was gonna be a topic, so I invited two of our new beat people, this is Harambe beat right here, to our meeting today, so to get to meet the Harambe residents and neighbors. And this is Officer Deitch, this is Officer Nash. I wanted them to come to the community meeting, and I'm gonna start inviting all of the community meetings so you guys can meet them at our community meetings. So you know who they are, you see their face, they're riding their bikes, sometimes they're in cars or they're in inclement weather, but I wanted you guys to actually meet the face behind the beats. So during the community meetings, you'll see them, you'll see different ones coming, so you get to meet them.
And to answer your question, I'm a big fan of beats, walking beats. I think they're very effective as well. Fortunately, I've been a little busy with some of the other things that are happening, so once things kind of settle down and I get to see exactly what I have as far as personnel and where I can stick beat officers and where I can make some of those changes, absolutely we'll be doing that. Yes?
So how do you figure out like where you want to allocate your officers? Like, is it by residents calling that you know a lot of things are happening in a certain area, or what drive, you know, how do you know where you want to send those officers?
So a lot of it is related to calls for service and the types of calls for service. So if we have calls like gambling, open air drug dealing, those types of things that are going to be seen on the street, right, that we can disrupt or even apprehend someone doing it. And when I say gambling, and I don't know if you guys know this. So the dice games that you see sometimes in the alleys, in the vacant garages, sometimes even open in the sidewalk. So people will tell you, it's just a game. It's just a game, kids having fun. We've had two homicides and probably 5 non-fatal shootings related to those dice games, those gamblings, those it's just a game. It gets incredibly serious. There's a lot of money that's involved. And a lot of times it's young kids. So the guy who's the winner ultimately becomes the loser at the end of the night because someone gets robbed. Or the guy who lost a lot of money is now angry, and now the gunplay starts. So calls like that, if we can disrupt that, right? Because we all know bullets don't have eyes. We've heard far too often some of those news stories, somebody sitting on grandpa's lap, or someone was in their bed, or whatever the scenario was. They stem from some of those things. Did that answer your question? You did. Okay, go ahead.
So I'm the youth organizer for Second South District 5. So I'm definitely connected with a lot of young people, and just as we know, they're going through a lot of things.
Absolutely.
and I feel your spirit that you really don't want to plan, you really want to hop on. But I'm hearing the word narrative. And I think right now the young people are trying to change their narrative. And I believe that having those conversations and relationships and like everybody else pointed will change it. So I kind of wanted to know like your goals, especially this summer. What's the plan to really change the narrative for young people? And I'm even, I know a lot of people talk about the 18 to 25 group, but even younger. Because they also are feeling ways, and I think one conversation goes to another conversation, then it comes to another conversation, then it's a whole group. But to really sit in and to, what are your goals to really kind of get that moving?
Well, I'd like to bridge that gap just like I would with any age group, right? And you're going to be a part of that. So give me a call. We'll sit down. And I mean that. Because that is an age group that I think is forgotten about. We've seen it in other communities where that age group is exposed to a lot of stuff. Right? And if maybe we pull out some of the mentors or we pull out some of the positive role models that they have a chance to maybe model themselves around and maybe can avoid some of the same behaviors or some of the same choices that were made before them. If those are pulled out, what's left, right? The environment around them. And it's a learned behavior. And there's a lot of confusion. And then if you get into that, for lack of a better term, system that tells you that this behavior is acceptable. And even if you know that it's not, but everybody else is doing it, and you've been seeing that, and now you're 15, 16, 17, 18, right? It's very difficult to change that. So you got one of the most important jobs in influencing that. That's the kind of help that I'm talking about. That's the kind of help that we need.
I'd just like to say good evening to you, and I'm obliged to have met you and welcome aboard. And
Thank you.
I hope that your staff treats you well and everyone is well respected. My goal is to work with our younger children, but I still see that many times when they see our officers, they shy away. They don't want to talk to them because we've put this image on officers that they're bad or they're murderers or what have you. It's happening everywhere. I see, when we see our gamblers, which are right there by Speed Queen, right across from the liquor store, so don't forget that. But my thing is to continue to work with our children and letting them know that officers are good, letting them know that their dreams and their careers can be leaders as officers, doctors, teachers. And I would just like to see more of that happen in the community, even with me by even, getting out in the park, I like painting children and just getting a group of them. My community isn't just where I live at, it's everywhere around me. And I'll continue to strive for that because I still believe and I love our officers.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that and thank you. So, in my 25 years, one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy, it makes me more angry than anything, it's when we're either in a store or we go to a call or we're walking down the street and you got a little kid, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, small, who might be acting up, acting like a kid, right? Because children are children. And you see that parent or that guardian or that adult figure in their life, yank them by the arm and say, knock that off or I'll call the police. Knock that off or I'll send you with them, right? That is more detrimental, just that little phrase is more detrimental than some of the other things that we see. Because then it's reinforced, right? Because then when the officers are actually called, and they do have to take some kind of enforcement action because someone's asking them to, and now the little kid's watching this thinking, holy crap, that's going to happen to me. And that starts the fear.
So we do, I remember Officer McGruff, the big dog, that used to reinforce the community with us being more comfortable with the police officers.
Yeah.
And we wasn't scared because now it's a different world with technology, social media. Everything is blasted that's negative against the police.
Absolutely.
That image in our kids' mind is negative, negative, negative.
Short news cycle that happens constantly. So one of the things that, from a youth standpoint, is I know the chief is trying to start back up the Police Athletic League, PAL, where you have officers who are coaches and mentors. Yeah. And kids get to do an activity that's fun and that's positive, and they get to see officers outside of the job. And then they start to realize, hey, you're the guy I saw come to the call the other night, and you were really scary, but now you're standing here, and you're teaching me how to dribble a basketball, or you're teaching me how to ride a bike, or you're teaching me how to hit a baseball, or whatever the activity is. Without a uniform, you're a human being. It would always kind of amuse me when we would sit down and eat as officers in uniform. You go to a restaurant, you'd sit down and eat. And we've all been there. And you got that little kid who's looking at you and is absolutely amazed to see you putting something in your mouth. Like, holy cow, they eat. Yeah, we eat. We're human beings, right? That's the kind of image sometimes that we need to be able to show them that we're human. And that's what I talked about earlier on, right? There's a human being underneath this vest, behind this badge. And we need to get better at being able to show that. But we also need your help, because a lot of that's learned behavior.
I think you made it very clear that police officers in Milwaukee, specifically to District 5, are very reactive. They get called to a lot of situations.
We do.
But I also hear a lot that we're all speaking about is we want more prevention.
Absolutely.
When we talk about defunding police, oftentimes the conversation goes to what are we going to do to prevent situations from occurring? We know, again, police officers are not a prevention net. That's not necessarily their goal, that's not their role.
Yep.
So as we have that conversation of prevention, how can officers start to be a part of that conversation of prevention outside of what you've already said? Like, what do you want to do for District 5 around prevention?
So, obviously we have a CPU unit, right, who works with a lot of the community organizations. I personally would like to see officers outside of work getting involved in things. Boys and girls clubs. Can I make that happen? I cannot force anyone to do that outside of work. I can't.
So what can you do to make prevention a priority for District 5?
Well, I can encourage people to do that, right? And I know there's officers that do already, and highlighting what they already do and getting them to be that informal leader to say, hey, come join me. Get partners to come join me, right? There are some incentives. Of course, it comes back to money, right? If I'm off duty, it's a day off or whatever. And if we have money in the budget, okay, you can earn some overtime. Maybe you can earn comp time to come in and do this thing. Not in uniform, not as a law enforcement agent, not as any kind of taking enforcement action, but just to do that. Right? But those are all things that I got to think about. Those are all things that I got to figure out. Right? We talked about that earlier. How does your idea, how do I get it to work and benefit us as a community? And I'm going to do that. I got to try. I got to figure it out.
Because I know you oftentimes partner with Safe and Sound to do a lot of these preventative efforts. But as you've heard, quite frankly, this evening, there's not enough prevention.
I agree with you. And you know why? Because we're the ones that are responding to these calls. Right? Police, law enforcement in general, the very nature of what we do is reactionary. It really is. There's very few things that are truly proactive. What are proactive are safe and sound partnerships, things of that nature. That's proactive, right? Because we're getting in on the ground floor. And not only are we getting in on the ground floor, but we're doing it with youth who are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Before they ever even get a chance to get into any kind of trouble. That's true prevention. Anything else?
How can we find more? Because those two officers just happened to walk up, ride their bikes up on me to let me know about this meeting today. How can we get more information about these type of meetings in the community?
So we're trying to do technology. We're try to do flyers, we flyer the businesses in the different areas.
Is this the first one?
We kind of try to take meetings all week, but before COVID.
Yeah, there's been a break, obviously.
We have preset dates usually. Post-COVID, we've been trying to come up with creative ways. We've been doing Facebook, we've been doing videos. We're on Facebook, we're on Nextdoor, we're on Twitter. It's also posted on our District 5, part of the actual Marshall Police Department page on Facebook. We try to get out information through there. If you have any other ways that we can try to get more people, please tell us. There's on the back sheet, I believe there's a list of numbers. If you want flyers, if you have a business that you want to give us, we can send out emails to our neighborhood Black Watch captains, and they're supposed to disseminate through their residents. So we've tried everything that we can. It's usually the first Wednesday of the month, but COVID, we've been trying to be creative.
Have you set the dates and locations for the remainder of the year?
They're technically set, but with COVID, like today is a Tuesday.
And with the commanding officer's preference.
So we've been trying to do things a little bit different. Every district is doing it different. We were trying to do it outside, the rain, so we came to indoors. So we try to give at least a month or a week notice at least to do these meetings. Yeah, the location moves, but not all of our locations right now are open. Like Hillside, we have it at Hillside, we've had it at DRS. Those locations are closed now because of COVID. So that's why we are here.
I was gonna say, if you share your, like from your district Facebook out into the world, like unless you're on that page, you know, like some of you I know are on neighborhood pages.
Mm-hmm.
Share it out, because the neighborhood pages are where the thousands of people are.
Yeah.
That would, you know, share it from the district page.
Okay.
But you could also share it.
I could. But I think you would.
That's that help that we were talking about.
I know, but I also forgot about it until this afternoon. Because I forgot about it because I didn't see it. But all of a sudden it came through my feed. But I'm saying if the page can go out, because then when it's somebody else that's not a police person, then they start, whoever posted gets a million questions that they can't answer. So my policy as an administrator for the page is I make the organization, whoever they are, make the post.
Gotcha.
So that I don't have to answer questions or field stuff that I don't know the answers to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Thanks.
So I just got one statement and one question. So Alderwoman,
Me?
all of you, I don't care who it is, but Alderwoman Cox sends out her notifies all the time and they get to whoever's connected to our Alderwoman. Why doesn't she send this? And second, would she have the resource for you to get in contact with the apartment owners or landlords of District 5 to share with them so that they can do, and he's already signed, so I don't know what that's about. But
I sent out the invite today to all of the aldermen in District 5, the state representative in District 5, the state senator in District 5, fire and police commission. And I put a read receipt on all of those people. They all saw that this was happening today. That answers your question.
And I only cite because there's a lot of landlords, that's a lot of leg time. I mean,
well, if you want everyone to be full, as long as you're there.
He said lag time, not leg work, lag time. Lag time.
Well, she just sent it today.
We'll work on it. We'll work on it.
I sent out the email last week to those.
Okay.
And I'm willing to reach out to Alderman, to what you stated, I'm willing to reach out to Alderman Cox's office to see how we can get the monthly crime and safety meetings part of her e-notified.
My understanding is Alderwoman Coggs is the most active alder person that we have in District 5, by far. Yep. So, and because of COVID, we just haven't been able to meet. People at City Hall just, they can't. We're here, I'm ready, anytime anybody wants to meet wherever, but Yeah. And that's some of the challenges. Obviously, we'll work on it. I would love to have this place packed. Absolutely.
I have something to say. I just want to
Yes.
thank you guys. I think you guys did a tremendous job with all these things that were going on. I don't think you guys get enough credit of how well you guys handled what just happened. The whole country was in shambles, and I was really fearing Milwaukee was next. And somehow you guys came through and held it down.
Hey, it wasn't just us.
Whatever was.
We were present, right, and we were ready to deal with whatever we were going to have to deal with. But the individuals in the crowd. So I met an individual, Dr. Remel Smith, who some of you might know. I met him at the mayor's press conference the day after the looting at the Walgreens, and there were 30 other stores that nobody knows about in our district, and then another like 40 across the entire city that were also looted and set on fire and other things, right? So he was talking to my chief and asked, who from District 5 can I get in contact with and really start to move this thing forward? And of course, the chief standing next to me, this guy right here, he's going to be taking over. I'm going to be promoting him, all that. So I got his phone number, and I sent him a text message, and he sent me one back. Throughout the entirety of our civil unrest, we were in contact. And I let him know, hey, I need help. I need help here. I need help there. This is what I'm hearing from the crowd. This is what I'm seeing. And he had a group, and I believe he and some of the others work for the Office of Violence Prevention with Reggie Moore. They would be in the crowd. They would be in the crowd telling people, keep it peaceful. Say what you need to say, absolutely. Keep it peaceful. When you saw individuals who were riding through the crowd with backpacks and face masks, right? We had people with bricks, like backpacks full of bricks that were ready to go smash things. His group would recognize that, shout them down, get them to move on. So it was a full community effort with that. And yes, we were ready, and yes, we took some heat, and yes, we had officers hurt. I had officers that were hit with bricks, that were concussed, that were taken to hospitals, that have broken bones. I had an officer that was shot. We had an officer that was hit by a car. We signed up for that. And I'm not saying that that's what they deserved, not in the least. No one deserves that. But we understand what that risk is. But I also show appreciation for groups like his that made sure that our city didn't burn, that we didn't turn into Minneapolis, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, some of these other places that had some real problems. And that's not to say that we don't have issues that we need to deal with. Absolutely. But it's going to take all of us. And it's going to take all of us acting responsibly. So when I say thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize the things that our people did, I also recognize what our citizens did and what our community members did. That is not lost on me. That is not lost on the officers that worked at District 5. So understand that. All right. So I think we are nearing the end of this. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being so welcoming. All of what we discussed, believe me, I'm taking it all in. I've got my officers here. They've got great memories as well. I can hand out some business cards